Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Desi TV USA. I am Tabinda Gul. Let's take a look at a very special report. On April 4th, the American Community Media Sparking Equity podcast hosted a national ethnic media briefing focusing on the need to restructure the traditional school day. Anne Stanton, president of the Linked Learning Alliance, discussed linked learning with Connect Education with real world carriers. Dr. Shalonda Gregory, principal of Midwest High in Oakland, shared her school innovative model incorporating big picture learning. Louis Freedberg, executive producer of the Sparking Equity podcast, spoke about the ongoing education reforms. The briefing highlighted the importance of restructuring the school day to create more equitably outcomes for all students. All arrangements were managed by Sandy Claus.
May be even more consequential in the long term for how we educate our children. We are grateful to longtime colleague Louis Freedberg, whose Sparking Equity podcast on schools first alerted us to this trend and who helped organize today's briefing. What first caught my eye was the podcast's headline, Reimagining the School Day. For over a century, the basic structure of the school day and week has been organized around 6 or 7 periods a day, 5 days a week, with each period lasting 40 to 60 minutes. It's something all of us remember from our own school experience, a fact of life we take for granted. She also served as the James Irvine Foundation's program director for youth for a decade. We're honored to have you all here today. Reporters, please enter your questions in the chat, and we will answer them after all the panelists have spoken. So, Mr. Freedberg, we begin with you. Please give us an overview of the state of learning in schools and why rethinking the school day is capturing attention in the field of school reform. Your turn, Louis.
Well, so good to be here, Sandy, and I just thank you for that introduction. And I should just say we couldn't go back too far, but you and I worked together very closely, going back to the 80s and 90s at Pacific News Service. So glad to still be working together on this very important project and talking with all of you online and the hugely important work that journalists are doing. One thing I've been gleaning just the last month or two, I think the journalism, people are appreciating even more what journalists are doing, and especially in terms of all the, how shall I say, attacks on the Fifth Estate. So thank you for your work. One of the things I don't have to remind any of you that the country went through, the last traumatic kind of episode was the pandemic. One of the exciting things I thought, I won't say exciting, one of the positive things that came out of the pandemic is everybody wanted to get back to school. Everybody is very excited about getting back to school. Even, people who were very critical of public schools, they were like, no, well, they were very upset when kids weren't in school. And I think you can all remember the excitement about going back to school. Well, people went back to school, and what have we seen? We've actually seen chronic absenteeism rates reach record levels. Fortunately, in the last year or so, things have improved somewhat, but we are definitely not back to where we were before. And what happened to all that excitement? What happened when kids came back to school? And I think what that has reinforced is that for many kids, not all kids, the current structure and the learning opportunities that we're offering students are not working or not working sufficiently for young people to get up every morning and to say they want to go to school. And I'm not saying all the absenteeism is due to motivation. I mean, there's absenteeism due to illness, due to various things, but certainly keeping kids engaged in school is a huge challenge. And I think it presents actually a crisis for public education, not only public education, all forms of education. Now, what's very interesting is that there's something called the Carnegie Unit. If you mention to most people, including I think most people in the schools, what is the Carnegie Unit? They would maybe, well, no, they don't really know what that is. Or they may have heard about it, but tell me more. But actually, the Carnegie Unit has shaped how students learn, the structure of the school day, graduation requirements, college admission requirements, financial aid, depending on how you've done in high school, what's reflected on your high school transcript. The Carnegie Unit, as Sandy implied, was basically better known as the credit hour. It was something that the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, which is based in Menlo Park in California, but it is a national organization, congressionally mandated, established in 1906. They were trying to figure out, how do we measure what students are learning? How do we measure, what colleges should, the requirements that colleges should establish for admitting students? And they came up with this thing, basically said that one credit hour, was 120 hours of instruction during the year, which means more or less 5 hours, 5 periods a day for 14 weeks. They've actually put these skills into legislation in terms of high school graduation requirements. So you definitely want to look and see what is happening in your state and in your local districts, whether the high school graduation requirements include some of these broader skills. So, Sandy, let me just leave it at that.
Well,
And
what's exciting, Louis, is that these are initiatives that people seem to kind of be coming at from within their own lived experiences in the field, as opposed to some great blueprint being handed down from the top. Is that a fair assessment that this
yes,
is?
and let me, Sandy, I don't know if this is the point you're making. The Department of Education has been more or less missing in action. This is not something that's coming from the federal government, So this movement can still go on regardless of what's happening at the federal level. And it's a state-based, like most of education, state-based and local school districts, and in many cases, in teachers in
Right,
classroom.
right. So we have a couple of questions, Louis. I'm burning with questions, but let me go to the chat. We have a question from Sunita Sarabji. Sunita, will you ask your question?
Thank you, Sandy. Louis, is online learning a factor here? Kids and parents have choices now, like the Khan Academy, for example, which allows students to learn at their own pace. And do you and the other speakers predict that online learning will replace traditional schools at some point?
Well, I'd love to hear Dr. Gregory's answer when she comes up, I think next. But yes, online learning does provide more flexibility. They acquired the ability to offer courses online. That wasn't the case at all.
Right. Let me go to one more question before we move to Dr. Gregory. Peter Sherman, you have a question. Do you want to share it?
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to reframe how I put it in the chat. I recall maybe 15, 20 years ago, sort of news emerging, headlines emerging about China, South Korea, East Asian countries surging ahead on STEM. And it created kind of panic in America. And it seems like it sort of changed a lot of how education was done here. And it struck me because it felt like the whole point of education was to essentially drive the national economy, to create cogs to drive the national economy. What you're presenting here is
Good morning, everyone. I'm a bit of a storyteller, so I want everyone to just take a moment and think back to your favorite time in school. And I want you to hold on to that. What was your favorite subject and why? What made this time in school so cool for you? What were the things you enjoyed most in school? So I want you to think about those moments, and I want you to hold on to them for a second. I'm going to share some things that made school really interesting and cool for me. I was a bit of a nerd, but I was a cool nerd, I would say. I don't know if my friends will agree. My friends probably have a lot of stories. So for me, the majority of my schooling, because I was really fortunate to have some really cool teachers amongst some duds. I had a lot of dud teachers, but I had some really cool ones, and they overshadowed the ones that were not so good. And they really created a safe space and a really nurturing space for me to just be myself and learn. Also, I really love to learn. I think because of that culture that they created. And so school was really fun for me. I found a lot of joy in school. And what you probably would never ever assume when you meet me, because typically when people meet me, I'm outgoing, I'm social, even though I'm not like that all the time, believe it or not. Um, you would never assume that I went to very strict schools. I went to schools that they call in Jefferson County public schools, traditional schools. So anyone from Louisville, Kentucky could tell you all about traditional schools, and they probably would add that they kind of skim from the cream of the crop, per se. They handpick their students, which is why they perform so well on assessments and do well as far as any other measures that are used to measure the success of a school. So that's a little bit about my background. But in that experience of going to traditional schools, I had some really cool experiences. So, for example, I love that my first grade teacher, Miss Dennis, taught us how to make butter. So we learned how to churn the butter. And in that process, we learned about the process of making butter. And of course, we got to eat the butter, which was the most fun, enjoyable moment of that. I can also think back to when I was in PE class. I love PE class. I love PE class mostly because it gave me an opportunity to show my athleticism and to kind of show the boys up. I was born at the end of the late 70s, so I grew up in the 80s, and it was during that time where it was a lot of conversations around, what girls could do versus what boys can do. And I never really adopted that belief or that philosophy around that. I felt that I could do anything a boy could do, and I could do it even better. So I love PE for that opportunity to really kind of showcase my skills. But I love science class. As I kind of referred to earlier, I was a bit of a nerd. So I really enjoy science because of the science labs that we got to participate in and all the experimenting. And it really fueled my passion of me wanting to become a doctor. I actually went to college to be a medical doctor. I know, shocker. I wanted to be an endocrinologist because both of my parents were diabetics, and I saw how diabetes really impacted their lives. And so that's what I wanted to do. So science was one of those classes where I was just like, oh, just all in, loved and ate every minute of it. But more importantly, it was the experiences that I was having, right? And that's the whole reason why I got into education.
Thank you, Sandy, and just an honor to be here in company with Louis and Dr. Shalonda. I'm going to take people back a little bit in terms of a journey because I think it's helpful to understand the context for the work, how it evolved, and ultimately where we are today. as Sandy so generously described in my past, worked extensively with young people that were at the furthest of margins, right? Marginally housed youth, homeless youth, foster youth, building in New York City as well as San Francisco, building comprehensive systems to reconnect them to education, to employment, to be housed, right? And when I had the privilege to move into a role in leadership at the James Irvine Foundation in California, wonderful statewide philanthropy, I had the chance to really think about what I learned and to think about how did that impact the young people that we and I am absolutely passionate about, young people in a decade of life between the ages of 14 and 24. It is a decade of difference for those young people. It is as important as the TK to kindergarten years, going through same developmental brain development, sociological development, et cetera. And so how do we really begin to think about how do we redesign learning so that young people don't get to the end of the game undereducated and underemployable, right? So we began this journey to create and think about what would the world look like. And I'm going back 10, 12 years so people can understand. At that point in time of 15 years, it was very, very bifurcated. People were either focused on college ready or career ready. And all young people were, frankly, based on a 50s model, sorted. And I can tell you who was sorted into vocational education and who was sorted into the college tracks in high schools, right? And so we wanted to really invest in, okay, there is power in both of those. What happens if we invest heavily in a new structure of really creating the and for young people? We are preparing all young people for success in college and career and civic life. And we wanted to experiment with it at a systems level, we did some work at school level. We wanted to say, okay, what would happen if we really began to look at the enabling conditions in school districts and school systems, from small rural districts to large urban districts like Oakland and LA, and small districts like a very small rural district in California called Porterville, and really see what would happen if people changed the way they delivered education with four core components. One, rigorous academics, so that no young person was not meeting the gatekeeper role of getting into UC, to CSUs or community colleges. They had all options available.
At least one of my students, even though I have many, they can tell you how this experience at Met West has really influenced the way in which they're, journeying through this life and the choices that they're making post-secondary. Again, a lot of our students.
So let me just say, around graduation time, we would love to do a briefing just with your students and have them tell those stories. I think our media would also welcome a chance to meet and hear directly from them about what happens when you do reimagine the school day. We're so short on time. We're already 1 minute past the hour. Let me ask each of you for a 30-second soundbite. And I hate to put you all on the spot, but imagine yourself in the newsroom. What would the headline for today's briefing? What would you like to see the headline be for the stories our media will be reporting? And let's start with Louis as a longtime journalist.
Increasing student success by rethinking the school day.
Okay, that is, I'm going to steal that, Louis. That's very good. Thank you. And Dr. Gregory, a headline that you would like to see in one of our media.
That is a good
You
question.
had a wonderful dream catchers.
Yeah.
You can still dream about your future while you're.
The headline would be student-centered, passion-driven.
Wonderful. Okay. I'm going to hire you all as headline writers, which is so much a key part of what we do. And Anne Stanton, what would you want to see as the...
I would say the power of plus, reimagining high schools to serve our greatest asset, adolescents.
That's wonderful. And that's a great note and a hopeful note to end on. And I just want to thank our three speakers so much for giving us this wonderful hour to think also outside the box for many of us to take this whole topic and see it through a lens of possibility has been very exciting and inspiring. Thank you so much. Our conference has to end too soon. Thank you so much.
So thank you for watching and thank you for supporting. This is me, Tavinda, signing off. Stay tuned for more news. DTV USA, DTVNN and our OTT platform, DTV Flex, where you can access to over 3,000 channels. So stay tuned and stay with us.
Helping Hand USA is a community that is guided by gratitude. A community that sees blessings beyond just tables. It's Muslims for humanity. Let's make this Ramadan a testament to the gratitude we all share. Join us to provide orphan support, healthcare, education and training, shelter, and much more. Give your zakat today at hhrd.org/Ramadan.